Welcome back to the Rollup High Roller community. As always, nothing on the Rollup is to be construed as financial advice. We are just some educators in the DeFi space. Toss us a quick like, give us a share, a repost, send it to a friend who may want to watch this, and finally, give us a sub or a follow. It means the world to help support credibly neutral educational content in DeFi. We're here to educate, empower, and enrich you, and let's jump in.
All right, let's get this thing started. I don't know if I could have...
Dude, that elevator music?
Yeah, the elevator
Oh my
music
goodness.
started a couple times over, so I think we got our taste of that.
Yo, let's get Monty up here from Catalyst.
Yeah, definitely. I sent out a few invites. I see Arjun in the audience, and I see Monty there too. Monty got an invite. All right, Arjun is up. And we've got Max from Connext here. Hart from Uma. What's good, Hart?
What's up, guys?
What's up? We've got Fig from Squid. Much love.
Well,
Yeah, Arjun's up here now. We've got Suze from IBC. GM.
Hello.
Hey. I think that's probably Kate on the mic at Axelar.
Yep. Hey guys.
What's up? And who do we have from Synonym? Is that Beach Ball?
yes, sir. That's me. How's it going?
Good, man. Quite a lineup here. I'm excited. I just did an hour on stablecoin and CBDC, so I'm properly warmed up. That one got me fired up, talking about central bank digital currencies, and I think this one will be a little bit more fun and thought provoking. So excited to get into it. Andy, what do you think? Maybe we'll do like a quick round of intros, and then we'll kind of kick it off. Cool. So, I mean, essentially everyone up here kind of needs no introduction, so I'll just kind of pass it around. Maybe we'll start with Hart, and if you want to take just a quick word, either introduce yourself or the protocol or anything that you're finding particularly exciting at the moment. We'll take like 30 seconds and go around, and then we'll dive into the meat and potatoes of this.
And maybe a fun fact about your protocol.
Oh, man. I go first. I'll try to keep this less than 30 seconds because there's a lot of us. I'm Hart. I'm a co-founder of a cross protocol. We are a bridge that is intent-based, which is a buzzy word, but let's lean into it. And yeah, I guess I'd be most interested in kind of debating the pros and cons of this intent-based bridging architecture that's focused on transferring token value.
Hey guys, this is Kate from Axelar. Got kicked off the main handle, so I now live on the Axelar intern handle. But I see Y-Kids here, so I gotta be smart and behaved on this AMA. But yeah, Kate here from Axelar. Axelar is a blockchain that connects blockchains to basically deliver secure cross-chain communication all across Web3. So that's language, consensus, whatever agnostic, acting as kind of the infrastructure layer to connect, basically everything that we can build in Web3.
Nice. Fig, GM.
Hey guys. Fig, I'm the co-founder of a project called Squid, where you can swap any token across any chain in under 20 seconds. We're covering most of the EVM chains and the Cosmos. And most of our messages go through Axelar, and we've got some IBC as well. And yeah, super excited to be here. Super lineup you got.
Max.
GM everyone. This is Max from Connext. Connext is a cross-chain intent protocol that allows you to move tokens and pass generalized messages without the use of oracles or acceptor validators. And so this enables to build applications that can interact with any chain in the most secure way. Super excited to be here and joining the discussion.
And Suze, big Suze in the house.
Hi. I'm Susanna. I'm the product lead for the IBC team at Interchain. IBC stands for Inter-Blockchain Communication Protocol. It's probably one of the oldest and most battle-tested, as they like to say, interoperability protocol, which is a generic protocol to connect blockchains together. But its first use case has been in the Cosmos ecosystem, where it's currently connecting over 100 chains. But it's a generic protocol that can be used with any blockchain.
Sweet. If we experience any X or spaces issues, just hopefully it just keeps going. I think Arjun might have just got booted, but is going to come back. Next, we have Monty from Catalyst.
Hey guys, I'm Monty from Catalyst, where I'm leading BD and integration. So Catalyst is a new cross-chain AMM that facilitates atomic swap between assets and different blockchains. Excited to be here. Dope lineup.
Sweet. And Beachball.
Hey everybody, I'm Beachball, founder of Synonym Finance. We're building a cross-chain money market, and we've got a real focus on UX first, making cross-chain transactions far easier than they have been to date. And we've got a big focus on routing stablecoin liquidity through Circle CCTP. Really happy to be here.
And Arjun is back, I think.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I think the lineup is so stacked that Twitter felt they don't need me here. But yeah, I'm Arjun. I lead research at LiFI. LiFi is a cross-chain bridge index aggregator. So some of our clients include MetaMask and Phantom, and bridges like Connext and Across here are also integrated into our stack. So happy to be here.
Awesome. All right, guys. The name of the space is multi-rollup interoperability unpacked. So no better way to start than to discuss the state of rollup interoperability as we have it now. Obviously, there's tons of different rollups in existence now, from ZK, EVMs, ZK, optimistic rollups, tons of choices to kind of bridge and to use with different trade-offs, and really just trying to open up this to a concept where that I've just kind of heard of recently, but have been kind of exploring more, where we almost can get to a world where we abstract this change of rollups and these different chains. And I hate to just start straight with abstraction, but we with so many rollups coming out, the reality is to connect all of these, it has to feel seamless and be seamless. So let's start with like what the technology is that you guys are providing to make an impact in this space. There's a lot of us on here, so if you kind of answer a question, we'll try to direct it to one and then kind of let it flow from there. Feel free to just jump in, but if two people jump on, just try to be polite. But yeah, I'm curious what you guys are building to kind of make your impact in making this roll-up interoperability world more seamless, more abstracted, and a better user experience. And I have a feeling this conversation for 90 minutes is going to take us on a lot of turns. So we're going to start with Hart, and we'll just jump in from there. And again, feel free, guys, to just openly chat after each speaker is done. Thanks.
Yeah, man, there's such a stacked lineup. This is going to be hard. I guess, what can we say here? So I agree that we need to abstract away these rollups, because there's just going to be too many chains that users don't want to know about. And so maybe I'll paint a vision, and then some of the other speakers can add to it. The idea, I think, where we want to get to is a user clicks a button in their DApp browser, whatever, and that button does something on another chain, and they don't even know that they talk to that other chain. And for what it's worth, I'm biased to think that like this intent-based approach is probably the right way to do this, where clicking that button, the user is signing a transaction that is some sort of order, like a cross-chain limit order, or some sort of like intent to execute something on a different chain. And then behind the scenes, there is some filler relay or solver network that goes and executes that order on the destination chain. And then there is some other system that has escrowed the user funds and releases them to this relayer or filler once this is done. So that's kind of the vision I'm seeing as how we get to chain abstraction. And this is the direction Across is pointing in. But I will shut up and let other people have their own take.
Yeah, Max, I know that you guys were kind of pushing chain abstraction. Do you have a specific thesis as to how this applies to rollup interop?
Yeah, I think we're pretty aligned with what Hart was saying. The idea that users will care or have to think or know about all the things that happen in the background, right, in the technological stack, is a little bit contradictory to what today happens on Web 2, right? People do not need to know on which server or which storage the website that they're using are deployed on, and something similar needs to happen in the Web 3 world. And the user experience will only get worse if we don't reach a status where the rollups are abstracted, right? We're going to see hundreds and then thousands of layer 2s, layer 3s on top of them. It's going to be very chaotic if we don't build a better experience. And yeah, the best way to start is by enabling interactions with other rollups, other chains, without the user having to think or realize that they are doing that. And that's when we get to a seamless transition from Web 2 to Web 3 and onboarding all these famous extra billion users that we've been talking about for years.
Yeah, just to kind of hop in there and exactly build on what you just said. Like when you hop on the internet, right, the average Web 2 user, when you're using, you're on Instagram, you're not thinking about how, TCP, IP, HTTP, HTTPS, TLS, all these protocols and kind of this stack is like powering your search and your, browsing experience. It's just kind of there under the hood working, right? And so ideally, I think we should get to a point where no user is like thinking about which ZK rollup they're using, because it should all just be kind of working seamlessly in the background, like as infrastructure, right, as intended. And I think, there's an important distinction between interoperability and composability, right? Like basic interoperability is kind of technically, you could argue, a thing already, right? Like sending an asset from one rollup to another via Ethereum, which you can kind of do right now. It's just really slow. Whereas like composability, right? Like the ability to initiate a transaction, from more than one rollup. So like I think the ultimate goal should be synchronous communication, and composability, which requires the development of new standards and protocols that we can kind of all build on to create this really seamless user experience. It's kind of my take on that.
I'll give my take. I don't think interoperability should be defined as token bridging. That's actually just one use case. But real interoperability is, I think, more on how you would, to me, define it as composability. But that's, I guess, just like a nomenclature distinction. But I think if we're, this end state, thinking about the end user experience is kind of, I definitely agree with that. But then I think we should also consider why we also building in blockchain in the first place. And to me, the core values of decentralization, not adding in additional kind of trust assumptions to kind of have that long-term vision of blockchain systems is something really important and should be a long-term goal that we also strive for. So I think, adding in additional trust assumptions to just achieve token bridging is probably fine as like a short to medium term for fulfilling those kind of use cases, but we should also think about the long-term purpose of these systems in the first place.
So what one IBC if
Go ahead, Monty, and then Fig will go after.
No, I was just joking. I'm just saying one IBC on EVM, like we're waiting. We would love to use it as well.
Yeah, but that's because of there's been decisions in the Ethereum protocol which haven't made like client support trivial, right? And that's like decisions of the Ethereum protocol, and it's partially due to what the Ethereum protocol is, right? It's a general purposing smart contract platform. So why would they actually prioritize interoperability? Because, you should be able to build all your applications in one place.
Yeah, we've ended up with this world where we have rollups on Ethereum, and they have these sort of enshrined bridges which are more secure, and they end up being where you collateralize a lot of assets, but then we have these liveness networks over the top and the intent protocols and whatnot to create good user experiences for people, so we can try to have a little bit of a best of both worlds of high security but also good user experience. And I don't think those two things are necessarily on a continuum against each other, but that's just how we're at the moment. Yeah, I agree with what everyone said though so far. My idea of the abstraction thing is we just released today actually a kind of demo POC where you can buy any NFT on, I think, 6 or 7 chains, most of the ones that OpenSea supports, with any token. And the idea being that you don't need to know what chain the NFT's on, and you don't need to know what chain your token's on. You just go onto a product website, you select the product you want to buy, and you click buy. And the same way you can pay with whatever card you want in the normal world, whether I've got an Australian dollar account or a US dollar account. I don't ever think about it. I just put my card in and pay, and I get my my product. So I think we're really close. Like, at least the experience that we put out, you get to buy NFTs in 20 seconds with any token on any chain. It's like a very single chain looking experience. And the next question is probably like, how do we scale that to, if rollups as a service really take off? Like, can we scale that to thousands of rollups? Will they be long lasting, some of these rollups? And it's all futuristic stuff though. So I think we're getting really close. Like, everyone here on this spaces is doing really good work, and where our protocols, applications are getting pretty advanced now. So yeah, I'm feeling really good about interoperability generally.
So on the chain abstraction point, I think I have a question. So it's like, when I think about an application, I first go and check which chain it is on, right? And then I bridge funds there. Like, that's the present day UX. But when you guys say chain abstraction, what does the user experience look like for a user? Because at the end of the day, there has to be some chain, right?
Yeah, but I don't think the user needs to know or care. It's like maybe this is a bad analogy, but when I'm on a website, I don't know whether the website's being hosted on Google Cloud or AWS or Microsoft Azure, right? And I'm sort of thinking of all these rollups as infrastructure to host your application, but the user doesn't care what that is. They do care to the extent that they end up having like funds that are in custody on that chain. And so I think that there's more work to do to kind of like abstract all that away. But like, to Fig's point, you can imagine I just click a button and I buy an NFT, and I just bought an NFT and I own it now. It might be true that I own it on a specific rollup, but like, from my perspective, that's all I want to have happen. And leave it at that.
So like, my follow-up would be, like, where is the user buying this NFT? Like, they have to be onboarded onto some application or wallet, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe, Arjun, that's LiFi's opportunity, right? But I do think that there is an interface here that is where users are interacting. And I think that some obvious starting points of this could be like aggregators or like Uniswap or something like that. But increasingly, you could just imagine that there is any dApp has its website, and the user goes there, and there's some SDK that allows the user to interact with that chain, that dApp's rollup, but from any chain. And so I kind of think that could be a world where you really are abstracting rollups into a form of like a database that's powering that application, and the user really doesn't have to care where it is or how it works.
Super cool. Kind of moving into the next realm of thought, was is this kind of situation where users have their preferred home of choice, chain of choice, roll up of choice, and you can all kind of think where that is for your own activities on chain. And I was kind of thinking about if there's a way to kind of bring users from kind of mainnet, I think, and from other ecosystems to rollups. And so I'm thinking about more of from a lens of like a deployment perspective, from how you guys look at which chains to support, whether you support different rollups on the bridging side, or from the application side, whether you support different EVM L1s, EVM L2s, rollups, and then also potentially non-EVM compatible ecosystems like Starknet and things. And so the question is kind of from a deployment and a kind of obtaining user perspective, how are you guys going about thinking where to deploy next, or how to bring users from a different ecosystem that your current DApp or bridge, if you will, protocol isn't exactly supporting? Is there some sort of like thesis that you guys have that you guys are building towards? And maybe you could share some of that thesis and also hear some of the other teams' thesis as far as deployments, supporting different chains, and then also how to do that in a secure fashion, to kind of bring users from their current home, which I like to think about as if it's not somewhere that has high levels of security, decentralization, speed, and cost, the whole trilemma, at least to some degree, then it's there's probably a better place. So the point is, and the question is, how do you guys go about the deployment thoughts, the onboarding of new chains and bringing them in, and then how do you think about that from like a thesis perspective as to where this multi-rollup ecosystem is headed? And we haven't heard from Beach Ball, so we'll start with Synonym, and then as soon as he's done, we can let it rip. So thanks.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, from a deployment perspective, like assuming we're referencing the current state of things where we don't have that kind of unified interface to connect to composable rollups just yet, we make the assumption that users are going to have to jump through a couple hoops to move ecosystems. The way we look at it is, one, is it aligned with our thoughts on security overall? I mean, at launch, we're going to be supporting just ETH, Arbitrum, and Optimism. That said, we do have plans to deploy to Cosmos and IBC enabled chains shortly after that. But yeah, our first deployment characteristic is security levels. Does it meet the thresholds of our existing chains? Second to that is usually more community centric, active users, engagement, and in our context, DeFi, lending, and borrow activity. And then the third thing that obviously anyone at the application level would face is just infrastructure support. So one, does our messaging protocol of choice work here? Does it work well? Is there robust support there? And then second to that, just given our focus on stablecoin liquidity, is CCTP there? That's generally how we look at a deployment. But I think that notion of jumping to new chains, pulling users in from rollups, I won't say trivial, but it becomes significantly easier in the kind of future that we were talking about in the previous line of questioning, which is kind of one unified inter-rollup wallet interface, we'll call it. The question of deployment becomes a lot easier in that future. So definitely working towards that.
Very cool. And I know there's different technical specs that are required, as well as like overall development specs from a point of view from more of the messaging protocols. So would be keen to kind of hear how you guys think about it from a security perspective, as well as from a trade-off perspective. If going from obviously we have Suze here from IBC, so bridging IBC and EVM is there's a set of trade-offs that you have to deal with. Roll-up to roll-ups there are. And this must go into your thinking when it comes to deployments and kind of where users are and how to access them in the most secure fashion.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're building in a pretty modular way. So like selecting our our messaging partner isn't going to be something that would necessarily be permanent forever. As standards evolve, we can always adapt to whatever makes the most sense for us. I think in terms of adopting some sort of interop standard from an application level perspective, it really comes down at the end of the day just to the potential for overall system liquidity and how well understood and battle tested the standard is. I think we would be doing wrong by users to make any leaps of assumption or jumps on either of those fronts. So that's really what it comes down to for us. But happy to hear anyone else's view on what would make teams select certain standards over others.
I got a little bit of a spicy take. That's maybe it'd be cool to get the group's perspective. But my general take here is that you want to send as few messages between chains as possible. So I'm like a messaging minimalist in a sense. And what I mean by that is I look at on your messaging layer, sending messages securely should be expensive or slow. Like it's hard trying to securely send messages quickly and cheaply seems very difficult, if not impossible. Consensus between chains is hard, and doesn't mean it can't be done, right? But it should be done rarely. And so my general view around this, and I'm curious to get people's takes, is can we build other layers on top? Fig said something sort of similar to this. Can we build other fast liquidity layers on top that are secure, that have like correct economic incentives to fulfill the user and give the user a good experience, but effectively minimize the need to actually send messages between chains? And this is sort of the design philosophy that we're trying to approach it across, where we do the intent layer, fast liquidity fill thing with relayers fronting money to users, but we verify them in batches, slowly, meaning we have very few messages to support a lot of activity. So curious people's takes.
Well, I think in Cosmos, there's cross-chain messages happening every day, but it's due to the different blockchain architectures and being powered by Tendermint or Comet BFT consensus. With instant finality is clearly a big contributing factor, and yeah, it's just not going to be the same in the rollup realm of things. But I think the question is, why should we I'm interested why that's your perspective, that we shouldn't be sending cross-chain messages frequently. It seems like, is it just because we're constrained by the existing systems?
So this is the IBC perspective here is, I think, very different, because IBC does send messages quickly, securely, and relatively cheaply. But that's because of the wonders of Tendermint and the architecture and all that. And you can understand this. You understand this obviously far better than I do, but I think it's pretty cool. In EVM land or with rollup land, sending a message costs gas and or takes time, costs money and takes time, and it should, because it should be something that is secure. So how can you get around this? Well, if we focus, and this is an interesting edge case of why I'm kind of so focused on token bridging, is if you're focused on token bridging, you can have this third party, the filler, solver, relay, or whatever we want to call them, front money to the user. So they fill the user on the destination chain without any message getting sent. But their cost here is there's a loan. They've lent money. And then if you're able to do that, you can batch together these relay repayment instructions in batches that you verify slowly. And so now you minimize the amount of messaging you're doing here, but you're still giving the user a fast experience. And the way I like this from a security perspective is, now that we have time we can take a long time and also spend money on sending messages, we can choose the most secure option to send those messages while still kind of amortizing that cost over all these user transactions we batched.
But then I guess the question is, do we believe interoperability in the long term is just going to be token bridging? Are we just going to be moving different tokens from rollup to rollup? All the rollups are just going to have basically the same apps. I don't know if that's the kind of final end state of blockchains. Maybe it is. But then if it's not, then I think general message passing becomes more important, of course.
So I think it's this is a really interesting point here that's like hard to predict. So I think I could argue fairly convincingly that the main use case today is moving tokens or moving gas to pay for something and like maybe doing an action. So it's like I want to move ETH to this chain and buy an NFT. So it's all value centric. There is a really important use case for generalized messaging here, which is like passing protocol parameters, let's say. So Uniswap governance votes on something on Ethereum mainnet, and we need to pass those parameters to some other chain. We definitely need generalized messaging for that use case. But I am curious to see where we need generalized messaging for most user transactions, like how important that ends up being, or if like 95% of kind of end user activity falls into this, move value and like do a thing with it category. Because if that is true, that like most of the activity falls into the move value plus do thing category, then maybe we can design a better experience by focusing on the token transfer use case, even though it is a subset of generalized interoperability. Maybe it's an important enough subset that it's worth specializing in.
Yeah, I also think that right now we really focus on token transfer as being kind of escrow and mint or mint and burn. But there is also kind of a message passing based token transfer, like atomic swaps, where you don't actually move the tokens from a specific domain, you just change the account holder. And I think right now we're very much in the escrow mint or the mint and burn phase. But I think as we start to see different user groups coming into the ecosystem, specifically like enterprise users, or even if you've got like CBDCs, they probably want more control over their token and keeping it within their controlled domain. So I could see the atomic swap use case becoming a bit more prevalent, and then general message passing becomes increasingly important. But that's just, one hypothesis of what things could become. You're right, like none of us know. We don't have crystal balls. But yeah, I think right now it's just because we focus on that specific use case. But I think my view is like, we really don't know, and we should be more flexible to prepare for the unknown future.
Yeah, just to, I guess, hop in here. Like right now, obviously the biggest use case is just transferring, assets. And, that being the case, and that kind of being the focus of a lot of the products that we're seeing, that doesn't really lend itself to the larger vision that a lot of people talk about of like onboarding the next billion users, onboarding, the next wave of Web3 users. And for us at Axler, like we like to think about this idea of like a super app, right? Like you can do everything in one app, right? Like WeChat, for better or for worse, in some of these big super apps, like you can do everything in the app, right? Like you can log in, you can make reservations, you can have your friends transfer you money, you can buy like everything can be done all in one app. And for blockchain to kind of come together, different projects across different protocols, across different ecosystems to come together and be able to produce something similar, or ideally better, right? We need to kind of move beyond just this thought of like transferring value and transferring assets, and that's where general message passing comes in, right? That's where composability comes in, to be able to offer users this super app, right? An all-in-one spot to do anything you want across different projects, aggregate different use cases, and not have to go from this wallet to this wallet, to this exchange, from this DEX to this central exchange, so if that's kind of the goal, right? And it really comes down to, is there going to be a need for that, right? Is there going to be desire for that? Or is that what people care about? or are we going to see this use case of people really just want to transfer value? That's kind of the main goal. We think, the Web3 super app is possible. We think, it should be something that we're working towards, but, we're providing, the infrastructure for developers to build that out. But it ultimately comes down to, what are people going to use? How does the, user experience lend itself to mass adoption of that use case? And is there a desire for it, for the end user?
What?
Yeah, so
Yeah, go ahead, Hart.
all I was going to say is I think this is a really interesting point that I also don't know the answer to, but I do have a sort of spicy take that building a decentralized application that spans multiple blockchains and has to read and manage state on multiple blockchains at the same time seems very difficult and not exactly, it seems like a hard thing to program and support and just tough. It's the whole idea of having atomicity and a single blockchain that I can know how transactions are executing seems like a much nicer environment to develop in. And if we do have most of the applications be single chain apps, that minimizes our need for arbitrary messaging between chains. Doesn't mean that there's no need for it. If I want to do some sort of cross-chain lending market, I'm going to need generalized messaging, but I'm very curious to see what applications get developed and whether they actually want to span multiple blockchains at the same time or just stay focused on one app and building in one environment.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's really difficult to do, right? It's not a very simple use case to solve for. And so for us, our kind of, ethos is create really simple and effective and powerful developer tools, right? An SDK that developers can leverage to go cross-chain from day one, have security built in, right? You shouldn't have to configure your own security. And then by providing a really, solid developer experience and developer toolkit and an SDK that they can easily kind of deploy, then from there, you're able to then start creating these really seamless and powerful user experiences, right? But it's not one without the other, and one lends itself necessarily to the other, right? To have great user experience, you have to give developers a really strong kind of toolkit and themselves have a great experience and a simple experience to build, applications that can do things that today we may not even be able to imagine, right? The Web3 can do.
And Beach Ball, I don't want to throw you too deep into the tech weeds, but do you have any thoughts as to the cross-chain application space as far as kind of how you look to approach that from effectively doing cross-chain lending in a form where a user can deposit and then borrow on a separate chain? What do you have any thoughts for Hart?
Yeah, I think in general, we expect over the long term that even though there might be situations where transacting within an application entirely on a single chain might be favorable, that the one thing that our entire team agrees on is that no one ever agrees, and that standards will likely never become uniform, like they rarely do in many other fields or industries. And so being inherently prepared for basically any set of users that are always going to want to transact across more than one chain within your single application is likely the right path to go on. I think the Web3 or crypto super app is definitely something to strive towards. But I think that in a space where we see this explosion of specialized environments for different kind of decentralized computing, different rollups, a lot of application specific kind of things, there's never going to really be true uniformity. And so from an app perspective, you probably want to be building to at least support a little bit of fragmentation, not so much at the technical capability level between ecosystems, but more so just what users believe them to be capable of and believe them to be useful for. So yeah, we're not, I don't think we really see that future where it's just single chain within applications, even if underlying it is a ton of different rollups.
So I think it really depends on what users end up demanding as their application. You look at DYDX or Ribbon or Avo now, those applications are specifically single chain apps and very it's very clear those projects don't want fragmentation. Like DYDX doesn't want liquidity spread across a bunch of chains and kind of brings the product. So sorry, I've got some background noise, guys, but I think that there's other use cases like what you're building, Beach Ball, that definitely need it. And I'm just super curious how the user demand evolves here and what users actually want to play with.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point, right? Like those applications, they obviously benefit from that lack of fragmentation, and it's a huge part of their overall value prop. I think it really depends on the users you're going after. I think we're all here hoping for a world where, you know, the general user is someone who has the technical prowess of our parents, and everyone can jump in and use these applications. I think we've got a long road in front of us, though, where the people that are going to be using applications like Synonym are specifically more kind of value transfer or DeFi focused power users that really want to tinker with things. And so, you know, we're kind of building for that. But I do agree with you that over time, there are certain applications that a lot of users will get attracted to and will become power users of, that specifically don't want to hop between anything at all.
Yeah.
I'm curious if... Yeah, Rob?
Well, the leap, like, talk about a hop from chain to chain, like, relative to the leap it takes for someone to go from, like, off-chain to on-chain, I think is an even greater hop. So, like, to the point of onboarding the next billion users, there's the notion of meeting the users where they are, which is like Apple Pay, Venmo, Cash App, and PayPal. And I'm curious if there's any of these interop solutions that are looking maybe at fiat on-ramps or looking at these off-chain wallets and trying to solve the solution for bringing this liquidity, maybe not on-chain, but using it seamlessly within the DeFi ecosystem. And it's a pretty general question, but especially the intent-centric architecture seems like someone could issue an intent from their Apple Wallet and then solve that with a liquidity on-chain. And then there's steps that are taken to deliver the product either on-chain or off-chain. Is there any protocols or solutions that any of our projects here are looking at to try to incorporate this liquidity into the ecosystem?
Well, I know that Noble launched the Cypher wallet, so you can actually have a credit card. It's a MasterCard credit card that you can load up with USDC and just use as you would a normal credit card. So that's already kind of normalized for like what you're doing in daily life, right? Spending with your card every day. So I think those kind of things make, especially people that load up crypto onto those cards, it's kind of really cool to be like, wow, I'm actually using crypto to buy a sandwich or whatever. So I think it's already happening. I know there's already like the Gnosis card as well. Crypto.com have a card. Just off the top of my head.
There's also on-ramps, right? Like Cato Money and a couple of others that will direct you straight to Rollups or straight to whatever ecosystem that you want to get to. That's kind of like our thing. That's kind of a lot of the reason that we pivoted to the Rollup. Like our goal is just to onboard people directly to fast, secure execution environments that like they can operate in, and it almost feels the same as if they were doing it on like one of these apps that Rob mentioned. I wanted to just circle back real quick, unless anybody has a pressing point. I wanted to kind of hear from Fig and Max if they had any thoughts on the on the conversation with regards to general message passing and value transfers, and just kind of if you guys have any thoughts with regards to that one. I was just curious on how you guys are approaching this, because I know that you guys, Max, are doing a token standard. Perhaps we can dive into standards as well, but yeah, you guys didn't get a chance to hit on that one, and if you guys have any thoughts on that and what you guys are doing, I'd appreciate those.
Happy to go first. Thanks for the space to say. Yeah, I think I'm slightly in the middle in the value transfer versus general message passing. I mean, I don't see them necessarily as against each other. General message passing is like it's the layer that we need to enable any of the stuff on top, like all the intent stuff. A lot of the token bridging should be built in an application on top of a general message passing layer. So they're kind of the same thing, but I do think that the vast majority of applications are going to be value transfer. Like we may end up in this world of these mesh applications which have synchronizing the state across different chains, but eventually it's all going to look like roll-ups and bridges at the end of the day. Like we're going to have a roll-up where we try to like constrain all of our application logic in one place, like what Susanna was saying about the atomic swaps, or the same thing that Hart was talking about. Like we want to create these stable environments where we can build good applications and then have these generic interfaces with everything else, so that we can have that like beautiful modularity and permissionlessness that crypto gives you. And that's what we've tried to take from the beginning. So Squid was, originally the vision was not necessarily to be a swap application, but to take what Axelar had as a general message passing protocol, which already had a bridge installed on it, and take that to the next level, so that you couldn't just bridge tokens between chains. You couldn't just send USDC to Axel USDC on another chain. You could go USDC to ETH and keep that general message passing capability, because I think the value transfer needs to be just as generic as the as the message passing itself, if you know what I mean. Like we need currency exchange is just such a core primitive needed for any global economy. So yeah, that's how I see it.
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, Max.
Yeah, I do agree. Very interesting points of view here, by the way. I do see the general message passing as a base layer where we can build new things on top of it, right? One of this is intense for sure right now, but I guess my point is when you do enable message passing that is both generalized and yet economically sustainable, you also enable new types of applications that were not even imaginable before. And this is what we've seen happening across every type of technology in every cycle, right? You first have some apps that are able to be built because of their underlying infrastructure. And then when the infrastructure improves or something new happens on that side, you then enables new type of new type of apps with new experiences that were not possible before. So I think we need both of those words, the intent layer, which is focused on value passing, and then the generalized message passing, to really not provide any blocker for this new internet that we're building. Right, the internet has right now an element of value, but also an element of pure data, which has value in itself. And the more fluid and the more connected you create this path, the more you'll enable a transition into this Web3 thing, whatever it will end up with. I mean, I think one of the biggest, for sure, use cases for general message passing would be this state sharing, state composability across the different app layers, app rollups that will come up, and that will need some form of composability and interoperability in any case.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that a lot of the peeps in this panel support is the XERC20 standard, and kind of brings us back to where Hart and Beach Ball were going on about DeFi users just wanting to use a DApp on one chain, versus kind of dApps on different chains. And kind of, you mentioned this state situation, and then we also have tokens, transfers, and governance as well. There's other solutions that exist, but I'm curious, Max, and I know Arjun from LiFi is pretty well engaged in this as well. How you see XERC20 playing out, and like what the what trade-offs you're solving, and then would love to hear Arjun's take as well.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. The idea of the XERC20, which is a bridge agnostic token standard for cross-chain tokens, is really to enable this seamless flow of value across any chain and using any underlying message passing system. Today, what happens is that every interoperability protocol has its own standard, has its own basically way of bringing tokens on a different chain, and this creates a fragmented environment across the different rollups. So if you bring your token by a canonical bridge or any other third-party bridge, you will end up with a different version of the token on the different rollup that is not fungible with each other. And so the idea of the XERC20 is really to enhance the original vision of the ERC20 standard, which was by definition a standard, a common way of doing things, but applied to the different chains, so that token issuers could still retain control over their tokens and not giving them up to the bridges, while at the same time enabling in a multitude of operators to provide the service of moving value and liquidity across the different chains and rollups.
I think the key benefit here is basically like avoiding vendor lock-in and also just removing the single point of failure, right? Like, of course, there are great bridges out there, but the tech is still evolving, and we don't want to pick a winner so early, right? So any of these like initiatives that are supporting a neutral kind of an ecosystem where all the bridges can create a competitive market, all of them can compete, and there's no like vendor lock-in for any of the companies is always better. So at LiFi, we're always in support of these initiatives. Something that we're working on is also multi-message aggregation, not the same as XERC20, but again, it's like stacking the benefits of one bridge on top of the other and kind of offering better security by using more than one of them.
What happens if one of the bridge providers in the XERC20 standard, token standard, gets hacked?
Yeah, the token standard does not enhance in any way the security of the single bridge, of the single protocol. What allows the token issuer to do is to set specific minting limits or a specific risk control over a certain bridge, which becomes your risk exposure towards that bridge. So, the way that we are recommending it to token issuers and projects that are embracing the token standard is that you can look at the different trust minimized architecture that exists today in the bridge space. The rollup bridges for sure, and IBC, for sure, they stand out as best class, and assign them higher minting rights, a bigger power, if you want, to mint tokens, to move tokens across the different chains. Because some of this infrastructure, as we know, it's battle tested, but as Hart was saying, might be slow and expensive, then you also want to provide some fast and cheap way to move tokens around. And that's when you whitelist also, you add to your whitelisting system third-party bridges that have these capabilities. You assign to those bridges very more limited, let's say,
Kind of losing you a bit. Susanna, did you hear that?
Yeah. I lost a little bit, okay. But my question is whether basing like your security model on rate limits, which is actually saying, okay, this thing might go wrong, but it's okay for it to go wrong to this extent, to me feels maybe a little bit weak. It's just an open question. Rate limits are great to minimize damage, but they say the damage can happen, but only to this extent, right?
I mean, so the other side of it is basically what happened with multi-chain and the other projects, right? So when multi-chain got hacked, so many projects just lost a majority of their token supply on a specific chain.
Yo, Max, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, my phone got connected to a random Wi-Fi. and and that's what happened. As Arjun was saying, this is the XRC20 is not a way to. It doesn't, but it's a simple extension of the smart contract. So it's not able to provide extra security to the single bridges, but it still gives the opportunity to the token issuers to retain control and adjust the risk parameters as the technology evolves. Right? We were mentioning before, it's too early to pick up a winner. And so the standard what allows you to do is to give a temporary right to a bridge to mint your tokens, to move your tokens around with the risk, with a specific risk parameter that you as a token issuer have decided to assign it to. And so, yes, it's not the ideal long-term situation, but for the state of things today, it's the best option for token issuers because they can say, hey, I fully trust Rollup bridges, and I fully trust third-party bridges and across Connext, and any other Axelar, all the bridges here that are participating. But I still want to retain the right to controlling how much I'm exposing my tokens to those bridges and to change my mind in the future. So it's really a future-proof solution that it's puts back the control back in the hands of the token issuers. And then as the technology ossifies, these technologies become more battle-tested and people move on the risk aversion curve, then gradually the risk limits can be extended and potentially this ability to wisely remove bridges can be removed from the hands of token issuers to become fully trustless and smart contract owned based.
Gotcha.
So I had a couple of questions. Who's firstly deciding the limits? Would you expect it to be like a single entity, a multi-sig, like the smart contract owner? And how do we make an objective measurement of security? I think there's been like conflicting ideas saying like security shouldn't be the concern of the application developer. But then this standard is directly saying the application developer should be responsible for assessing security. So it seems like we kind of have these like contradictory themes of discourse in a discussion. So yeah, I think my question is, how do you objectively measure what is a sound approach to this risk tolerance? And then who's actually deciding? And if it's an entity, it's like, okay, what's like the path to kind of decentralize this in the long term?
So the idea is that right now, any token issuer is in charge of deciding how they want to move the tokens around, right? Some projects might believe that the native bridges are the best way, are the only way. Some project issuers might prefer third-party bridges as they have other trade-offs. But they are already, as a matter of fact, in charge of deciding what happens to their token. How does their token get bridged? They provide incentives for the liquidity to happen on specific bridges. They coordinate the operations. So the reality is that token issuers are already in charge, and DAOs or whoever control the organization are already in charge and are already in control of the operations. So that's the answer to the first question. Like, who is in the decision maker? It's the same token issuers that would still decide how do they want to facilitate the movement of their tokens across the different chains. Now, how do they decide who is the best bridge? What are the best bridges? That's that's a very broad discussion. I think that's part of what we're doing here, what Andy and the Rollups have been doing here with trying to educate the ecosystem on the right way, the best ways to do cross-chain. But ultimately, the decision is still up to them, right? There might be several factors that come into play, but it will be up to them to decide and to play around really with the different limits, starting slow and then gradually increasing the limits for one or more bridges, up until they feel that the technology has ossified enough so that they can really revoke this right to change the whitelist, to change the minting limits, and everything ossifies into a beautiful trustless ecosystem, which is the way that we are hoping to work in the future, right? But where we are not, I would argue we're not there yet in any of the technological stack.
Just to add something there, I think like as long as we're in a position where we cannot objectively say one messaging bridge is better than all of the others, something like an XERC20 is quite important. So I think we've reached a stage where there are probably 4 or 5 solutions that are, I don't know, there's consensus that there's superior tech, but between them, it's very hard to, pick a winner. Like even with the Uniswap Bridge Committee, after, I don't know, 3 months of spending a lot of resources, research, looking into all of the different solutions, they decided to choose 2 and still gave a chance to like all of the other solutions. So I think as long as we cannot objectively pick a winner, it's going to be very hard to, not see the benefits of an XERC20.
Yeah, and I think Suzanne is coming at this from a point of view where that, like the IBC, and correct me if I'm wrong, the IBC kind of perspective is, tries to remove these sorts of controls, if you will, or kind of, as you said, rate limiting kind of decisions up to a certain extent. You try to just avoid the kind of issue as a whole. And I think you brought up another really good point, Susanna, which is the concern of the destination chain on a message or a value transfer, or just any chain that these interoperability protocols are connected to, being compromised or affected, or just the general state of that execution environment being completely compromised, or at least to some extent, wherein the value of that is significantly impacted. Multi-chain harmony, these types of events, and I just would like to open up the floor to how you guys are, in addition to the XERC kind of concept, how you guys on an individual level are preparing or have prepared and just are battle tested and protected from, one of your rollups that you support going under, or a chain that you support going down and having a complete kind of loss of value in some sort of capacity, whether it be a malicious sequencer attack on a rollup, or some lack of consensus for days and days and days on an L1. And perhaps I'm not even thinking about this right, but I'm pretty sure I've got the idea right. And we haven't heard from Romani and Router, so we'll start with him, and then I'm curious to hear from each of you guys, as well as piggyback off the convo there. So,
hey, thank you guys. Sorry, I had just lost focus for a second. Was there a specific question?
Oh God, RIP. All right, we're gonna move to Kate.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, like with the multi-chain, hack and all that kind of, all that went down there, like there's actually a real world example of, Squid keeping liquidity, right? With the architecture being the hub and spoke model versus like a pairwise model. So being able to just kind of identify and quickly contain that malicious connection. So I'm going to actually, sorry to put you on the spot here, Fig, but yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about like how the actual, the multi-chain debacle went down, and how Squid was able to like retain and stay liquid versus the other, projects that did not.
Thanks, Kate. Yeah, I don't know. I'd be interested actually how the cross-chain token standard that you guys are, multi-messaging standard you guys are looking at handles hub and spoke versus point-to-point, because that was something that really helped us during the multi-chain hack. That basically the issue is that when a bridge goes down, it potentially makes a bunch of assets on a chain like Phantom. Infinitely, you can mint infinite amounts of them. So depegs like every asset, and what it means is that if you have a point-to-point system, then all the bridges from Phantom to the other chains that are connected, it's very difficult to track how much has been drained from Phantom. So say you have $100 million of USDC on Phantom, you could potentially drain $100 million of USDC on the other side of every other chain which is connected. So if there's there's no sort of central way to track that value transfer. So we were able to keep online because we're in a hub and spoke model, and Axelar has this the rate limiting set via each spoke, and we could be sure that the Axelar bridge in total, in aggregate, wasn't under collateralized just because of Phantom USDC being depegged. And yeah, that was just a nice part of the architecture. But I'd be interested how the standard you guys are proposing handles that.
Yeah, Max, if you have any thoughts there, and then if Susanna does, with particularly between IBC and EVM as well as IBC to IBC, but we'll give Max a chance here to fill in.
Yeah, the idea is that, let's say, a token issuer has decided to whitelist a specific bridge for multi-chain, for example, for 10 million tokens a day, 1 million tokens a day. That is the risk exposure that they're getting to that specific bridge. So if they have whitelisted two bridges, for example, let's say Axelar and multi-chain, and they've given both 10 million tokens each as a minting rights on both chains. What will happen in case multi-chain gets manipulated? Let's say multi-chain goes offline, for example. So the issue here is not that somebody has stolen the tokens, but in the case that there was a single bridge able to move the tokens around, those tokens will still be locked forever on the destination chain. And instead, because the token issuer is able to whitelist more bridges, they can users can use the other bridge to move the tokens around and move the tokens back to the origin chain, because the tokens that are minted on the destination chain, say Phantom, are the same whether they're minted by Axelar or by multi-chain. Right? The beauty of the standard is that it allows you to mint the same flavor of the token in the maximum amount that is set up by the minting limits of the specific bridge. So in case multi-chain goes offline, users can use any other bridge that has been whitelisted to move the tokens back, move the tokens around, and so the tokens don't get stuck. If multi-chain gets hacked, and I'm using multi-chain as an example, of course, I don't want to be aggressive on that cases. If in case multi-chain gets hacked and a hacker actually steals the fund, then of course those funds are compromised, and then the hacker is still able to sell them, to bridge them with another bridge, and to do whatever they want. So that, as we were saying, the standard doesn't enhance the security of the single bridge, but it effectively limits the exposure that you get from a single bridge. Right? So in that case, those 10 million tokens have been stolen, and the hacker is still being able to do what they want with them, but it's only 10 million tokens. It's not the full supply anymore, as it happens today. It's only to that specific limit that has been assigned by the token issuer.
But what about, I mean, if Phantom is connected to 6 different other chains, then how do you track the, I guess you can track it on the Phantom side, the rate limit, but every other chain doesn't have a guarantee that if multi-chain is hacked, then you could potentially drain the 10 million from Phantom 6 times because it's in a point-to-point setup instead of a hub and spoke setup.
Yeah, there are some controls in that. In general, yes, the limits are per chain and per bridge. So yes, you do get a form of shared or shared responsibility or shared risk across the chains that are connected to the same bridge. That's for sure. Like the idea is to really be conscious and having a gradual increase of the limits across the different chains, across the different bridges, so that you are gradually getting more exposure to them rather than doing a no-lane altogether.
So I think this loosely relates here because I saw Philip, the founder of LiFi, put up a proposal to implement this XERC20 standard for Lido and taking their LST over to Binance Chain. I'm curious, like, how this would look and like how it kind of works together with some of the other interop protocols. Either like Arjun or Max, maybe you could kind of like expand upon kind of the tweet that was put out by Philip and talk about like what that would mean for Lido staked ETH.
Yeah, let's see the tweet.
Yeah, so there was a very exciting tweet to see and an exciting proposal. So what is happening is basically Lido has put up a request to bridges to say, hey, we want to bridge rough staked ETH to BNB from Ethereum. What's the best way to do it? Okay, and the proposal from Philip and then the LiFi team is, first of all, let's use the XRC20 standard so that the Lido DAO can still retain control of the token contracts on the destination chain. Right? They're still able to decide how the token contract behaves and which bridges are allowed to mint and burn the tokens on BNB. And they will always be able to retain this type of control, basically being able to add or remove bridges from the whitelist. Now, in their proposal, they're suggesting three entities to be added to this whitelist. These are Axelar, Wormhole, and an aggregated message between Axelar and Wormhole that is somebody called multi-message aggregation. Because of the beauty of the XRC20 standard, what can happen is that you can have these three entities have different minting limits. And in this case, coming back to what Susan was saying, it's easier to understand which one is the most secure, because from one side you have the single bridges, the validation method and architecture of the single bridges, so Axelar and Wormhole taken independently, and from the third case you have the aggregation of the two bridges. So basically the two bridges need to come to a consensus, and then when they do, the message is considered valid on the destination chain. So the Philip proposal was saying, hey, let's give 2 million minting limits to Axelar, let's give 2 million minting limits to Wormhole, and instead let's give a higher limit to the aggregation of the two, because that's considered more secure than the single entities. What this enables is that you can have the MMA moving bigger amounts or potentially any amount of funding across between BNB and Ethereum for staked ETH. But then, because this type of aggregation is very expensive, you also want to enable fast and cheap transfers, and that's where the minting limits for Wormhole and Axelar will come in, because they will basically be able to mint a smaller amount of staked ETH on destination chain. They will still allow retail to move around in a very cost-effective way the staked ETH.
Susanna, do you have any questions?
It sounds like there's some kind of security aggregation model, if I've understood correctly, where you need to, you have to have verification coming from Axelar and Wormhole, and then the third thing seems just like a combination of Axelar and Wormhole again. I guess this puts in some trust assumptions. But then my question is, what if they don't agree? Like, what happens then? Who's right in this case?
It's got to Kate now.
No, nobody. Like, so that's an aggregation format. So there are three ways that you can bridge according to the proposal. 3 ways that you can bridge staked ETH to BNB. One is directly by Axelar if they haven't reached their 2 million limits One is directly from by wormhole if they haven't reached the 2 million limits. If they have, then anybody try to bridge will look at this aggregation format. This aggregation says, hey, it's a 202 multisig basically, and each entity signing the multisig is are the two bridges. So if they don't sign both the transaction, if they don't come to an agreement, the transaction is not verified, it's not applied. And this is an approach that different projects are adopting. There is Hashi, for example, that is looking at aggregation of different bridges or different messaging layers. And so this is very likely to be the most secure approach when you want to bridge between two layer ones beyond the light clients. And so this is a trend that we're looking at.
One party could intentionally not agree because they want to censor specific transactions. And then they could effectively stop transactions going through, right? Because I'm not I'm not going to one party could just always say never sign a transaction, then this would block any message going through. My other issue with aggregation techniques is, is it just like building out the multisig? What if you're aggregating, you have like a light client and a multisig? Like, why would you ever want to aggregate these things together? Because surely the light client has like superior security guarantees than the multisig. So I don't know whether I think security aggregation is makes loads of sense to me.
But well, this is what is available right now, right? It's available and it's easy to add other entities to the multisig, so you can have a 3 out of 5, for example, 4 out of 10, whatever you believe is the right ratio, until we get to a state where like clients and so-called zero-knowledge bridges are actually feasible and working across the layer ones that we want to connect.
And I'm just curious, how would that even look like on Axelar or Wormhole colluding internally to not process a certain set of transactions? Like, don't they have a set of parameters which enables them to not allow that to happen? That's why they're a part of this, or perhaps I'm missing something there.
Yeah, I mean, Axelar is we are kind of in the middle as an open and decentralized set of 75 validators, right? This is a permissionless set. It's not like, a permissioned set where we, pick and choose. It's kind of open market. So, and we have thresholds, right? Like we have quadratic voting to stop kind of people just aggregating a whole bunch of stake and pushing through votes. Mandatory key rotations to also add another layer of security. And for voting, it's a 60% threshold, right, for anything that goes across the network to pass. So there'd have to be pretty significant collusion on Axelar's validator set, which again, they're all, there's different companies from like larger enterprise companies down to individuals who've just been really great kind of actors on the network, who've been given, Genesis delegation from the beginning, running different hardware, different, firewalls, different, be it Linux or whatever. So to collude on Axelar's network, we have a huge amount of kind of security protocols in place. So I'm not sure, it'd be very difficult to do it. And before there was an internal multisig for some different, facets, but after the Uniswap vote, we recently passed an upgrade to put those all on chain. So it's now fully decentralized. All of those kind of 4 out of 8 processes that were identified by Uniswap are now fully on chain. So we're, completely decentralized now. So I'm not sure what the kind of the, one, it would be very, very difficult to do. And 2, I'm not sure what the intention would look like for that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I want to speak for you, Suze, but I think it's just from the perspective of just obviously bringing to light the possibilities and being able to objectively assess trade-offs that are present in the current state that we have, and then at least understand where those kind of points of weakness are, and then be able to kind of build off those and at least recognize and build towards a more steady and secure future. And I think coming from IBC, we haven't touched much on light clients, but it's something that we just kind of heard briefly from Max and from you a little bit. There kind of seems to be this air of superior technology with like ZK based bridging and light clients. So we're coming to the end of the space, probably another 10 minutes or so here, guys. So might as well touch a little bit on like some of the future proof and future tech possibilities with ZK. It always seems like talking about ZK is like, you know, years away and years, but it's probably closer than we think, but also farther than we think. So, Suze, if you could kind of give us a primer on, I guess, maybe some of the IBC to EVM stuff using light clients, or just kind of some, you know, TLDR on ZK-based light clients and how they could hopefully assess some of the trade-offs and kind of your thoughts or just things in that realm. I think the audience would love to hear about it.
Yeah, sure. So, light clients for IBC and Cosmos are not using ZK currently, but there's nothing to say that they couldn't in the future. They just use consensus proofs. But ZK in the kind of Ethereum IBC world is mainly used for compression so that it becomes more cost effective to update your light client. And you could also use ZK to verify the validity of a specific transaction rather than just looking at the consensus proof. I think everyone looks to kind of a ZK light client as like the kind of gold standard, most like trust minimized kind of end state for interoperability. But I think consensus based light clients are equally kind of up there, because if you want to communicate between two different chains, you're already implicitly trusting the consensus of those two chains. But so yeah, I guess that's the high level. ZK technology still seems fairly nascent, at least being used in production.
Cheers. And then, sorry, go ahead.
I guess like there's not a IBC based connection to Ethereum just yet, but there are various teams working on that. There's a bit of a race competition to get there first. I presume it's going to happen probably early next year, where everyone's in test nets or public test nets right now.
Yeah, definitely. And well, Fig, you and Axel are kind of allow kind of wrap token transfers between different ecosystems as well. I'm curious if you guys are looking at, like, if you guys are at least thinking about different solutions, or even in a sense, some of these projects that Suze is talking about, right? Where, I mean, I think it's between like Union, Composable, and Polymer, but I think Polymer is moving out of that direction. So I think it's really just Union and Composable, which are kind of almost one and the same, but we won't get into that. But are you guys thinking about like the next iteration of what that could look like from like the Squid's point of view, Fig, of like almost like the layer on top, or kind of how does that fit in when that IBC EVM comes in? Yeah, I guess I'm just curious what you're thinking about that from Squid's perspective.
Yeah, it comes in a few ways. I think if there's connections that they have that are secure and work really well, then we can integrate them. And I think the Axelar VM, which is Axelar version 2, however you want to call it, is a new layer that they're working on, where you're able to permissionlessly deploy any kind of verification method. So if there's a good ZK light client, then you'll be able to deploy that on the Axelar VM, and it gets added to the network really seamlessly from our end. Like Squid would have to change up like nothing, and the difference would probably just be in the security and maybe the speed as well of our messages. So yeah, definitely excited about these technologies. I think the ZKs may have the economic security in a sense. Like you have this verification versus trusting an economic model. You have the benefit of that, but it's also very new technology, and like all new technology has bugs. Cryptography is like not necessarily the cryptography usually takes us a while to have Lindy. So, Axelar is currently just based on ECDSA, and that's got great Lindy. So there's a bit maybe a security thing there, but from Squid's point of view, the whole point of Squid is that you're swapping between native tokens on any chain. So the amount of risk that our users are exposed to is actually really small. But yeah, really excited about expanding IBC. Like we support IBC, so wherever it's supported, we'll be there.
Yeah, you keep your Lindy up, Fig. Great vibes, bro, always. Kate, kind of wrap us up here with Axelar's POV. I know Fig kind of just spoiled the beans a little bit, but he stole your thunder. But yeah, I'd love to hear more about what you guys are working on with this V2 update.
I guess one of the there's kind of two facets of it. It's in testnet right now. It's scheduled for mainnet sometime soon. Is ITS, which is Interchain Token Service, which basically currently EVM is on testnet coming to mainnet, and then IBC compatibility will come to testnet, then mainnet. But basically, it's a way to either mint a token or add, add this functionality to a pre-minted token where you can instantly, access fungibility across 12 EVM connected tokens that Axelar has already created gateway contracts for on our network. So it's a no-code solution. So if you're a developer, if you're not a developer, right, there's options to kind of, like I said, mint a new token or add this fungibility to an existing token to the 12 initial interconnected EVM chains that Axelar's already connected. And like I said, IBC is coming soon to testnet. And then as soon as new chains are added to the network, there's kind of instant, fungibility across that new chain from all the other connected chains. So that's kind of the most, what's coming up the soonest. But yeah, I mean, Fig did a great job of explaining kind of the AVM as a whole. But yeah, that's what's coming up very soon. No exact dates because we don't have them yet, but yeah, probably early next year or even end of this quarter if the devs are super speedy on it. But yeah, ITS.
You guys make a good team. Thank you. I'd like to just wrap up one last thing, which is probably, I mean, if you guys got to run, you got to run, but a little bit separate from the specific bridging conversation. Suze, I'm curious, please, if you could, TLDR on what the heck is happening in Cosmos right now with this atom inflation proposal. I'm hearing forks. I'm seeing separate Twitter accounts. I'm kind of getting my head around it, but like from the inside, what you can speak publicly and neutrally, kind of, would you mind kind of explaining what's going on there and perhaps any of your takes that you can share?
I think that there's always Cosmos going on. I mean, drama going on in Cosmos. However, I think there's a distinction to be made between the Cosmos hub and kind of the interchain as a whole and the technology powering the interchain. So I think, yeah, the inflation drama, people disagreed. People say they want to then fork the Cosmos hub because they disagreed with the passing of the proposal that reduced inflation from 20% to 10%. I think that's kind of, if people genuinely do want to fork, I guess that's like a possibility. But as to whether it will happen or not, who knows? But the wider interchain have their own governance, and I guess, yeah, it doesn't mean just because there's drama in the hub that there's drama everywhere. And so yeah, I don't have any insider kind of knowledge on that. We're part of the IBC team. We just build out IBC.
Just vibe.
The user, but yeah.
Cosmos drama is the only constant guarantee in blockchain.
Yeah.
Oh man. In a world where I can see Fig's face, he's laughing. I know that's for sure. Thank you guys for coming on. Max, thank you for accepting getting grilled by Susanna for 20 minutes. Not that it was actually that much of a grill, but it was good. Really good answers, Max, and we appreciate you and the standard. Thank you, Susanna, for bringing the good questions and the alternate perspectives. And then, of course, Rob, the host, and the team here.
Don't forget Beach Ball for bringing a DApp perspective to the panel. Appreciate that. And yeah, thanks everyone. It was a lot of fun, and all the knowledge. Definitely learning tons, and I thank you, and thanks on behalf of our community too.
Yeah, we're gonna make sure we record this whole thing and get it out as a full like podcast-esque series, because this was just action and education packed. So thank you guys.
Thank you for having us.
Awesome to be on. And yeah, again, Susanna, really appreciate the kind of the hard-hitting questions there. It's nice to have that on a space. So yeah.
And Max took it like a champ.
I mean, yeah, like, we need a little bit more, constructive disagreements and, discussions on these spaces. So definitely appreciate being here. Thanks, guys, for having me on the Axler intern account, since I haven't kicked off the main one because I got too silly.
Thanks,
Fantastic
guys.
conversation. Thanks, guys. Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone.